Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. We'll begin in 1 minute. All right, let's begin. Good morning. Welcome to Apply Day 2019. This is the 10 a.m. Central Time. What's new in Autodesk Inventor 2020, presented by Jerry Oy. My name is David Elliott. I'm Director of Business Development here at Applied Engineering. And for me and all of Applied Engineering, thank you for attending these events. To begin, just tell you a little bit about Applied Engineering here. We've been around for 33 years, for over 33 years, and Applied Engineering has been meeting your engineering challenges, whether it be with engineering services, our technology team, and providing training, implementation, support of software and hardware solutions, or with our services team, providing design, manufacturing, engineering, as well as software development and reprographics. We fit your needs. We have the talent. Our talented team of engineers will work at your site in our design centers using the latest tools to help you with your product design and documentation. We provide the perspective. Our outside perspective will bring new ideas from a variety of industries and backgrounds. We have the technology. Our software team will sell, implement industry-leading design software, and will train and support your team the whole way. That's just a taste of what we can provide for your company. After the presentation today, we'll have our contact information up. Please jot that down or reach out to us if there's anything else that we can help you guys with or assist in any of your projects. Before we get started today, I wanted to just mention that questions, please put them on the right side panel. There is a chat box in there. I will be monitoring that throughout the presentation, so if you have any questions, please put them in the chat section. I will check the question area from time to time as well, but the chat section just seems to work a little bit better. And we will try to get those answered as soon as possible. Otherwise, they will be answered at the very end of the presentation. Today, Jerry Oy is going to be presenting on what's new for Inventor 2020. And I will let Jerry take it away here. Let me switch you over as the presenter.
All right. Let me go back here. All right, thanks, Dave. So as Dave said, my name is Jerry Oy. I'm an application specialist here at Applied. So I work with many different Autodesk flavors of software, obviously Inventor being probably the most popular software that I work with, and I also do training for Inventor, different intro to Inventor, sheet metal, part modeling, advanced modeling, and so forth. Also 2D AutoCAD for those of you that have used AutoCAD. You may have seen me in your classes if you've taken any of our classes. So I have probably about 30 to 45 minutes worth of what's new with 2020. Some of these features are going to be entirely new to Inventor, and some are just going to be more or less improvements, kind of small improvements, but regardless, I'm going to show you guys what those updates are and what the new features are. So let's get started here. So as everyone knows, Inventor software is professional grade. For those of you that actually drive General Motors products, professional grade, right? So depending on if you're modeling complex piece parts to high quantity assembly files, creation of your drawings, Inventor has actually sped up the development of your drawings and assemblies. If you're trying to do section views within high quantity assemblies, a lot more responsive when sectioning. You can kind of see in one of the slides, some of you may or may not be familiarized with iLogic software. Comes with the standard version of Inventor. So if you want to create intelligent part models, drawings, or assembly files, I would recommend maybe checking out Autodesk YouTube channel for some iLogic kind of tutorials to give you a taste of what Inventor is actually capable of. Stay connected with your files using what's called Inventor AnyCAD technology. So in previous versions, Inventor came out with AnyCAD technology a couple of years back, but in older versions prior to AnyCAD, generally a parametric designer, whether you're using Inventor or any of the other parametric softwares, you would have to bring in either like a step file, IGES file, Parasol, and so on. Those days are long gone now with AnyCAD. So as you can see in that image in the upper right, you can bring in native CATIA files, SolidWorks, ProEngineer, Creo, and so on. And the dynamite thing about that is, let's say a vendor sends you a file of, let's say, Creo. If a change was made to that Creo file and you're using it, if that vendor sends you an updated version of that Creo file, all you'd have to do is basically overwrite what you've already saved is that Creo file, and then the next time you open up that assembly file, that Creo file is actually going to update. So it keeps a link between that native Creo file and your Inventor assembly file. So you can certainly bring in step files and IGES files still, but it's not necessarily needed anymore. And then you can collaborate between your designs using, your tablet, smartphone, computer, and so on. There's quite a few different free softwares out there that Autodesk provides. Just a couple of them to bring up is Autodesk TrueView. There's just a standard online Autodesk viewer. And then there's what's called Autodesk Design Review, and that's for viewing what's called DWF files. It's just another file extension with the Inventor software. And then a handful of these improvements that you'll see today comes from you customers. Inventor Idea Station. There's a website out there, Autodesk website, where you can submit some ideas that you think may improve on the software, and depending on how many kudos that particular idea gets, Autodesk will take that into more consideration, and at some point in time in a future version, it's going to get implemented into the software. So Autodesk most definitely listens to the customer. All right, so as I said, some of these slides I'll actually go into a demonstration. I'll just toggle between the PowerPoint and Inventor. Some of them I'll just kind of talk through. So UI enhancements. There is now a new light theme interface. So if you look at the ribbon panel, as opposed to the 2019 and older software, now the ribbon panel is kind of lighter in color. There's icon refresh, so I'll show you, I have both 2019 and 2020 up on my screen, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Some additions to feature manipulators. In the frame generator, if you want to rotate, say, a square rectangular tube, there's now actual manipulators within the graphics area that you can use, as opposed to actually using the dialog box to rotate or position your profile of your structural members. Thread texture, not really big improvement, but just the overall image of that bitmap image on the surface of, say, your internal threads or external threads has changed ever so much. And then there's graphical presets now. So actually in this slide, it shows you this drop-down menu. Maybe the performance of a large assembly when you're trying to rotate around or whatever might be, say, a little jaunty. So you can click on that drop-down menu and just kind of play around with those 3 different graphic presets. High quality is going to look the most appealing, and then you can go on down to performance. So that would increase, that'd be the best selection for if you're in a big assembly file to be able to rotate around, zoom in, zoom out, and so on. So Command enhancements. This is going to be one of those love it or hate it type of things, but in 2020, when you're working with your extrudes, trying to create an extrude feature, there's now this new dialog box. So it will take some getting used to, probably, a few minutes, I would say, but you basically select your profile right here, go on down the line, and you generally, in most cases, extrude from a work plane, what direction you want to extrude your features. So you can extrude in, I guess, what I'd call direction A, direction B. You can do symmetric extrusions and what's called asymmetric, where you're extruding at different values in your direction A and direction B. And then obviously your taper angle down at the bottom. So extrude, revolve, sweep, and threads have all been enhanced. This is what I think is a great addition to the software, is multi-monitor support. So now in 2020, if you have multiple monitors, you can take one of your open sessions of a part model or assembly model, and you can drag it over to another screen now, as opposed to only being able to have Inventor on one screen and not being able to drag it over. Performance enhancements. I'm not going to go into an actual demonstration on the performance enhancements here, but just Inventor, as far as the speed, has improved as far as zooming in, zooming out on large assemblies. Creating patterns in the assembly environment has been sped up there. Express mode. If any of you use express mode on large assemblies, one thing that has been added is the ability to be able to add sketches, 2D sketches, within the context of an assembly now. In 2019 and older, you weren't able to create sketches in the assembly environment in express mode. And now you can do that. Maybe if you want to just kind of lay out a footprint or something, a 2D footprint of a factory floor, you can have some 3D assemblies in there, and you can just have maybe just a 2D footprint of some other equipment out there. 3D section views. If you're doing a half section and you drag your arrow manipulator through your assembly files, speed has been increased for you. Performance increases in the drawing environment when creating the different views. As you already know, when you insert those views, temporarily there's going to be green corners in your view boxes, top view, right side view, ISOs, and so on. When those green corners go away, obviously your view has been completely generated. AnyCAD interoperability. So importing those native Creo files, Pro Engineer files, SOLIDWORKS. There's now newer versions that you can now import. Obviously, Inventor is latest versions 2020. Same with Creo and SOLIDWORKS. There's new versions out there now, so you can import those native files still. Solid sweeps. In the older versions of Inventor, you'd always select a 2D sketch profile followed by the path that you want that profile to follow. Now you are actually able to select a complete solid body, a separate solid body within a part file, and take that solid body. In this case, it'd be that pin, and you can have that solid bodied pin follow a path around a specified path that you specify. In this case, it's just a helical 2D sketch. And then one of the orientation methods, this very last one, you can have that pin follow the orientation around that cylindrical feature. Okay. Design enhancements. There's an unwrap feature. Don't get this confused with sheet metal parts. I mean, this is a sheet metal part, but it's not actually flattening it out, and it does not take a factor into consideration. Think of using this feature in a case where you take a sheet metal part and you're pressing out a feature. Okay, so just as it says here in the bullets, fabric or stamped type of objects. Okay, just kind of gives you just a general representation. You know, you could maybe it's some sort of object where you're wrapping fabric around it or what have you. So be pretty close to being able to cut it out and be the actual size that you need there. And you can insert that flat object into a drawing. All right, when extruding your different profiles, so this is a slide that is, I think, groundbreaking as far as I'm concerned. So when you're selecting the different regions for what you want to extrude in 2019 and older, Inventor would select the entire sketch to what you want to extrude. And now in 2020, you are allowed to select just these internal regions. So if I want to extrude just this internal region there, not the entire circle, I can now do that. Or if I want to do the entire circle, then it's just a matter of hovering my cursor over that actual sketch and I can extrude it. Merge faces, there's a merge face option now. So just take a look at this kind of web here between the three different circular objects. It's going to basically blend it in there between those three objects, and I'll show you here in a minute when I dive into the demonstration. All right, relationship enhancements. Not sure if any of you have ever used this feature here, but when you are in a part environment, you can right-click on a feature in your model tree, and then in that right-click shortcut menu, you can select on relationships. This dialog box pops up. So what's in the center? You're saying you want to analyze what is the parent features of this selected item, and then in the bottom pane, what are the child features? So what has been added in the 2020 software is the ability to select sketch blocks and see what the parent and child relationships are. Content Center, for those of you that use the Content Center, you can now use keyword searches. So if you don't really know of the location where hardware, fasteners, structural members, and so on are saved, or what folder structure they're saved in, you can go into a search and just enter a keyword search for socketed cap screws or whatever it may be. And there's also wildcard characters that are now added, such as the asterisks and also question marks. So migration enhancements, when you're going from 2018 to 2020 or 2019 to 2020, there's this migrate settings dialog box. This was in the older versions, but 2019 had this interface, customization, and also the application options. So what has been added in 2020 is the ability to migrate your command settings and any presets that you have customized within your older versions of the Inventor software. Okay. All right, getting into frame generator. In addition to the software is the ability now to add end caps onto your structural members. You can add end caps on the outside of your structural tubes. You can also add either chamfers or fillets to the corners. As you can see there, there's some chamfers on there. Maybe you want to take those end caps and place them on the inside of the tube as opposed to the outside like you see here. You can also do that just by setting the placement option here. Thickness of your chamfers, what's the thickness of your end caps that you want, and your offset value. So if that end cap is set inside your tube, what is that offset value that you want, material type, and so on. Additional enhancements to the frame generator is just the ability to be able to add miters, more than one miter at a time. Older versions, you'd have to select the two members, click apply, and then go on to the next one, click apply, and so on. Now within the one box, I could select all the way around this perimeter, all four members, and apply the same miter at all four corners. So that increases your productivity. Trimming and extending members, you can now extend symmetrical, or you can actually extend asymmetrical also. Maybe if I have added a miter in a corner and I decided I wanted to have one member overlap the other member, You can do that, and there's going to be a toggle button for removing the end treatments. In Canvas, manipulators. So right at the beginning of the PowerPoint, I told you there's some manipulators in the frame generator. So now you see there's these white glyph dots. So as I'm creating those frame members, the inventor is basically asking me the orientation that I want. I can grab one of these arrows and I can rotate the member either clockwise, counterclockwise. Placement method in the older version, 2019 and older, in the dialog box, I would have to select on one of these dots here around the profile, or obviously that center of the profile. Now instead, I would much rather want to click in the graphics area to locate the profile in the center, you know, top corner, top middle, and so on. Okay. And then down at the bottom dialog box here, you can see that's symmetrical lengthen or the asymmetrical, different values in both directions. All right, so now next few slides gets into the customer-driven improvements. That's that idea station that I was talking to you about on one of the Autodesk websites. Enter your idea, depending on the kudos, they will get implemented. One of those customer-driven enhancements is the ability to create a mirror of a sheet metal part within the assembly environment and link your sheet metal styles. So if you want to link your sheet metal styles, so basically you have a left and right hand version of a sheet metal part. You want the thicknesses to always stay the same, 1/8 inch to say 1/4 inch or whatever it may be. Even the material type, you can link your styles. One side changes, a left hand version of a sheet metal part, the right hand is going to update accordingly. Another dynamite addition to 2020, for those of you that actually use the joint command for creating constraints, there is now a joint that you can create called a slot center joint. So take that slot and add a joint, could be a rigid joint in this case, and Inventor allows you to snap to the center of a slot and then obviously snap to the center of a round hole in the case of that yellow piece part there. Tube and pipe and shaft generator. Now when you're generating those frame members or even the shaft sections, you can have Inventor default to what type of file name structure you want. So how do you want your frame members to be called out for the skeletal portion of your frame member? As you know, when you bring in create a frame member, you got to bring in a skeletal sketch first, and then off of that skeletal sketch, your frame members get generated, such as the end caps and all the individual components. So you can have Inventor by default create certain part number in kind of a naming sequence. In addition to 2020 is a vendor or anybody for that matter, there is now a Inventor read-only mode. So basically this Inventor read-only mode is just basically a viewer. You're able to look at your parts, assemblies, drawings. You can use a measuring tool on the inspect tab to measure between point A, point B, and so on. So there's obviously limitations. You can't create parts or assemblies or drawings for that matter, but you can at least look at those already existing parts, assemblies, and drawings. Another thing about Inventor read-only mode, when you're opening up read-only mode, it does not check out a license. Okay, so there's no license that get consumed on your network. It's nothing more than just a viewing tool for you. So additions to your AnyCAD technology, all these versions that you see here on the left, those were in the older versions. All that has been added is just the newer versions of all these different softwares. You know, as newer versions come out, they have just been added to the AnyCAD technology within Inventor, so you don't have to go back to an older version of a SolidWorks file, ProEngineer file, and so on. Inventor and Fusion 360, AnyCAD technology. Some of you may or may not know about Fusion 360. It's just another parametric software that Autodesk sells. You can also bring in Fusion 360 files. So if I were to make a change, go directly into my Fusion software, make a change to a part, if that Fusion part was inserted into my assembly design, I would be able to right-click on that file in my Inventor model tree and say update part, and then it's going to update the part if I had made a change directly in the Fusion software. What you see here in the example, this is what's called generative design. So basically you kind of input as far as maybe the least amount of material you want to have a functioning part that's not going to deform or fail under loads. Accessing Inventor, so you have what's called the Autodesk desktop app. When you install Inventor, there'll be an icon on your taskbar. So you can use that icon to update, add service packs and hotfixes to any of the softwares that you have purchased, such as Inventor and AutoCAD, 3ds Max, and so on. If you click on your actual name, you can go into your Autodesk account, and then as you already know, in your Autodesk account, that's where you can install your different flavors of Autodesk software and so on. Okay. So if you look on your taskbar, this is that desktop app, just looks like a little A icon. You can click on that and then the dialog box pops up. All right, and then this next slide, just feedback community. So you can actually register with Inventor Beta. For those of you that want to provide Autodesk with feedback on newer versions that haven't been released yet and they're trying to add additional improvements to it, you can register username, password, and be part of the Inventor Beta program. And then, as I mentioned, the Inventor IDs. Okay. All right, so I am going to pop over to Inventor, and I'll go through some of these different slides and kind of show you a demonstration here. All right, so here I'm in Inventor 2020, and I am going to pop up 19 also. And I'm going to go to the 3D modeling tab of both of them. So if I drag this up, you kind of see that on 2020, there's currently is not a dark theme, but I personally icon refresh. The icons are basically more of a softer type of look to all of them. Okay. Parts kind of generally look the same there. There's really no improvements there. If you look over at the model tree, very minute differences here. Your sketches that make up the features in 2019, you have basically just a little caret or an arrow here, and now they just change them to pluses. And then again, icon refreshes. All right, so let's pop over to 2020. If I go to my View tab, now there is, let's see here, right here is your presets. So let's actually bring up an assembly file. And this really isn't the biggest assembly in the world, but if you are having performance issues when it comes to rotating around or zooming in, zooming out, you could think about going to your View tab, hitting that drop-down menu, and go to Performance. So basically the look of your assembly is going to change a little bit. May not look as realistic as having it set to the high performance. I can go in here and I can say high quality, and then it goes to something like so. So in the high quality mode, it might potentially be a little bit slower when you're orbiting it around. So all of these presets are really doing is it's modifying some of these other options or changes in your appearance panel here. All right, if I go back to that casting, I'm going to bring up both windows here. Let me drag this over a little bit here. All right, so if you have your ground plane turned on, in 2019, you'd see that ground plane. All Autodesk really added is just the X and the Y axes on the ground plane. Just kind of helps the user distinguish between the overall orientation, you know, relative to your view cube here. Obviously, you have your Z here and your X there. So if maybe you're zoomed, you're orientated like so, you have an idea of the orientation that it needs to be in. X is always the red one, Z is always your blue, and then obviously you have your Y, which doesn't show because it's the ground plane, right? So very minor addition, okay? Thread texture, so just looking at a bolt in this case, very minor change is just the way that the bolt thread looks. Basically, the edges on that thread are more pronounced there is all. So very minor change, but still a change. Okay. All right, so let's go into this particular file. And now when I go to do an extrude, this is the dialog box that pops up. Nice thing about the extrude, revolve, sweep, and so on, is the fact that those dialog boxes stay docked essentially where your model tree is. Instead, 2019 and older, you'd have a dialog box right in your graphics area. So you're kind of taking up some real estate in there, and Inventor kind of cleaned it up, so now everything's going to be in your model tree. There are some features, such as the loft, which is still going to be the old way, where it pops into your graphics area. So, you know, potentially with 2021, that might be an addition where it's going to be docked to the left, just like your extrude. Okay. So in 2019, when you're doing an extrude, basically this is the option that you would get. When you're trying to select inside a feature, let me just go back here. If I'm trying to select inside a feature, I would not be able to highlight inside there. Okay. Inventor would think I want to extrude the entire profile. Well, in some cases, maybe I just want to extrude those little slivers there. So 2020, you can do that. If by chance you want to do the entire sketch as opposed to selecting inside a region. So there's a region, and so on, okay? If you do, and there's that little web now in 2020 that gets added if you're papering in here, okay? To show you what it looks like in 2019 if I were to do that. I'll extrude that, and I'm going to come in here and share the sketch. I'm going to extrude once again. Add a taper onto here. So this is exactly how it would look like in the 2019 software. There is no web in between those profiles. And then the multi-monitor support. So I have multiple files opened up at the bottom here. You see the different tabs. If you grab on any one of these tabs and just basically undock it, obviously I'm not using multiple monitors right now, but you can already see that I can go off to another screen if you wanted to. And then if you want to dock it back to your default monitor, it's just a matter of basically just dragging it down to the bottom and then just drag and drop. As I mentioned, some of these slides I was just going to go over, so just performance enhancements as far as in-place editing, editing in the context of assemblies, window selections on your assembly files, creating component patterns in the assembly environment has been sped up, and then along with the generation of your views in your drawing. If you have large assemblies that you're creating a drawing of, the generation of your front view, right side view, and so on has been improved. All right, so going into this file, if you want to create a swept feature, older versions, you would have a 2D sketch profile. So it'd be nothing more than just a circular sketch, right, that you want to propagate around a predefined path. I go into the sweep function now. Sweep function is one of them that's docked in my model tree. When you click on a field, it just kind of has a line underneath it. So I'll select on a solid body, go on down the line, select on the path that I want it to follow. It will give me a preview. And then orientation method, I can select on this one here, aligned, and just select that surface. This example isn't necessarily the best example because I'm just working with just a round individual solid. And then, you know, what type of output or Boolean operation do I want? Add material, cut material away, and so on. And then I'm going to select what solid I want to cut. So I want to cut that cylinder. Click on OK. And then there's your outcome. It would look the exact same as in 2019. The only difference there is I actually used a individual body. So solid bodies folder, had that cylinder, and I also had that round ball there that I used as my cutting operation. All right, so here's that sheet metal part. It's a stamped object. In real life scenario, you would not physically be able to flatten this out because you're essentially deforming the material, right? So within here, I go to my 3D model tab, create panel, here's Unwrap. Just click on that and then select on a surface. Right now, the defaults, what you see here checked is what would be checked by default when you first install the 2020 software. One of them is automatic phase chain. So you can see it's going to propagate all around the tangential surfaces. You could also uncheck it and say, just select on one surface and it's going to flatten it out. Really, there's nothing to flatten out there. But let's go back into it, have that be checked instead. Select on that surface and it's going to flatten it out here, okay? Now really the orientation of that flat, it doesn't align to that sheet metal part. On the perimeter, you can kind of see skewed there, kind of dip down. Some of these holes are kind of elongated, they're not round anymore. You can go into the behavior and you can kind of fine tune that flat state. So linear result, so maybe if I want this edge here to actually be straight, I can have fixed it and it's now a straight edge there, okay? This may be a tool you may or may not use. It's not the way to go about flattening out sheet metal part. In this case, it's just a stamped type of part, but I would say, you know, basically use this maybe for fabric or, you know, stamping an object. This perimeter is close, so you could potentially plasma this out, laser it out, and it would be close to what you see for this end result here of the formed stamped sheet metal part. All right, so I'm going to go into, let's go back to an assembly file. I'll go back to this one here, okay? So I'm gonna go into the assembly tab, click on my insert, and place from content center. So an enhancement within your content center is just the ability to come over to your search here, and you can just place an asterisk and then say, just say socket head, and it's going to bring up all the various socket heads that you want. You can also put in a question mark. So the asterisk is just basically just a generic space claim for just any type of socket head screw that you want to insert. Okay. Let's go back to sketch blocks here. So I took a sketch that was made up of these 4 links, and then in the sketch tab, there's a layout panel here, and I created some blocks. I created 4 different blocks here, so I can grab an area and I can move it, and it's not actually even a 3D part. I can take 2D entities and can add some motion to see if it's built the right way. So I can come in here and I can right click on this sketch. One of the options here is relationships. Okay, so I can diagnose the sketch and see what the parents are and what the children are. Now, if I right click on a block and do the same thing, okay, so off of that block, the children features is the sketch that makes up that block. Okay. So as I mentioned, some of you may or may not have used this tool. This tool was in 2019, but in 2019 you weren't able to use this tool for sketch blocks, just your individual 2D sketches. And then when you install 2020 software, when you first start it up, you will get your Migrate Settings dialog box. So 2020 added this dialog box, or this addition, Command Settings, Migrate Settings for property panel commands, and then any presets that you have set. So you can bring those into your new Inventor software. 2019 had interface customization and application options already. All right, so let's go over to a frame assembly file, show you some of the additions here. So let's go into the design tab. Now you can see there is a insert end cap addition. So all I would need to do, I'll just come down here and I can select on the ends of these tubes. And let's just zoom in on one of these. So there's some different options. How do you want that end cap created? Chamfers, some other options, filleted corners, chamfered corners, sharp corners. With each selection, it will update your preview. There's filleted. What size do you want the fillet to be? Okay. Inset percentage. So inset 1/4 inch. Go back to 0. And then I'll change the placement method to the outside instead. What material type you want it to be, what appearance you want it to take on. Part numbering scheme, content center or file name. File name just allows you to place this end cap in whatever folder you want, as opposed to placing in that content center that is located in your project file. So I'll just click on OK, and then now here it's generating it and it's placing it in my default folder, and there's an end cap. So actually, if I come back in here, let's just undo here. I'm gonna go back into the end cap, and maybe I wanted a plate that this frame structure gets bolted to a, let's say, a concrete floor. So I can do an offset value. Let's actually go -1 here, and select those other feet. Okay, and I'll just accept that and generate those end caps. So you have something like so. Miters. So I need to apply miters in the 4 corners. 2019, you would do it 1 by 1. Oops. So click on the miter function, and I can just go all the way around, wham bam, and all at once apply a miter to all 4 corners. All right. An enhancement into the frame generator. So if I zoom in at this general location, have some round tubes here. Currently, I haven't added a notch on there. But if I go into the notch command, select on that, and then select on my notch tool, there is now this perpendicular cut. Right now, I'm going to leave that unchecked and just show you the end result that Inventor would do. So basically, that's the way it would look. In the real world scenario, let's go back into that. Oops. Probably help if I go into the right number here. All right. So let's go back into that notch. And edit it. Now I'm going to turn on perpendicular cut and accept that. So this really would be the way that it would look in real world scenario, right? perpendicular to the surface. So I have a nice feature there. If I want to extend a member, I'm going to use in both directions. Okay. And then let's I'm going to go in here and delete this member out and bring up my skeletal sketch that I brought in. Go back into insert frame. And I'm just going to generate some frame members here. Specify what type of member I want. Oops. Let's do this again here. Generate those members, and I'll do a few more here. All right, so just to point out here, now there's these manipulators, so if you want to rotate, you can do it right on the screen, as opposed to in your dialog box here. Or the actual orientation, 2019 and older, you would have to click in your dialog box for the orientation. Now if you just grab one of these glyphs, you can reorientate your member that way, okay? All right, so I'll just generate those other members. Some trimming operations here. So if I say trim to frame, I'm just going to click on that one. Trim to extend, actually. Click on that one, and then what face I want to trim to. I'm going to select on there, do something like so. Oops. Let's uncheck that. I think I have to do the back side here. All right. So one small addition in 2020 is this trim selected part. So depending on if that box is checked or not, you're basically telling the software which side of that trim do you want to keep. And then obviously the other side goes away. Okay. There's that delete existing end treatments. I didn't have any existing end treatments, but Inventor would delete a past end treatment in order to create the new actual end treatment. All right, so let's pop over to an assembly of the sheet metal part. So linking your sheet metal styles. So if I go into the assembly tab and then find mirror on the pattern panel, I can click on that and then select what surface I want to mirror about. And then depending on what I have selected here, so this yellow status reuses the selected object. Very first one is essentially, think of it as a left and right part, so they are not identical. So if I place it on the first status icon, then down here I can say link sheet metal styles. So I'll just accept that. Click on OK, and I'm going to zoom in on the seam right here. And I'm going to edit in the context of the assembly, this very first iteration of it. Go into my sheet metal styles, adjust this to maybe half the thickness. Click on OK, and return to the top. And it actually took the right-hand version and it kept the sheet metal styles the same. So it'll go the same with the adjusting the thickness to maybe change the material type. All right, center slot joint. I think this is a really good addition or improvement to the software. So some of you may use joints, some of you may just use constraints or maybe even assembly type constraints. So if you go into the joint now, I'm going to zoom around to the back side of this part here. If you don't already know, when you're applying joints, if you're not getting the right particular location, one thing you can do is, with this surface already selected, I'm going to hold Control key down. And then I can easily snap to the center of that slot now. And I'm going to say I want to snap to the center of that hole. Do something like so. And I can add to it by aligning this. I want to align there to, let's go to the back side here. Something like so. Actually, let's change this here. There you go. All right, going the right way. And I can add to it here by setting my limits. So let's change this to a slider type of joint. Gives me a preview there. Then I can set my limits, the starting point and the end point. I'll set that to, say, value 1, and this one to a value of -1. So now I can grab that part and I can drag it to its, essentially its starting point and its end point here, right? And the rest of these parts is just a matter of, you can use any one of these types of constraints. You know, maybe an insert constraint here. I could insert that to another feature, but in this case, make more sense maybe to just select the surface. And that surface, apply it, the axes to the hole on that square part, like so, and I'm done, right? So I'll grab that part, I can drag it. All right. Naming defaults in tube and pipe, and also your frame generator. Tools tab, application options. On your file tab, you can go down to file naming defaults now in 2020. So the skeletal sketch that you bring in, that was that skeletal sketch of the frame, shows you a preview of what it would currently look like when you bring it in. I could actually come over to my add attribute drop down, and I can say I'm going to add a unique number. Gives me additional preview. If I delete that, go through some of these other ones, index number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Same with end caps, actual frame member that gets generated, all the different individual piece parts that gets generated, round tubes, square tubes, rectangular tubes, and so on. Top level assembly file, just add attributes, just put your cursor in front of it and then click your add attribute to add those particular attributes. All right, I'm going to come down here and bring up Inventor read-only mode. So it should be opening up here shortly. All right, so I'm gonna click on open and just scroll through here and just randomly select on a IPT file. So this really is nothing more than a viewer. As I mentioned, it does not check out a license. So don't worry about that. You can see there's a lot of tools in the ribbon panel that are similar to your full-blown Inventor software. View tab, you can do section views if you want to, section through it, and some other different functions, lighting styles, visual styles. Inspect tool to measure from point A to point B, right? But you can also see, though, that there are some limitations in your ribbon panel. Nothing more than just a viewing tool for you to use. Maybe the people on the shop floor or something like that. Okay. Any CAD technology, the ability to bring in fusion files. So I'm going to close out of this read-only mode, and I will just simply bring up a blank IAM file, so it's assembly file. Place drop-down menu, place imported CAD files. So this is any CAD. And I'm going to go in and I have a folder, Fusion 360. This allows me to go onto the cloud. For those of you that aren't familiar with Fusion, Fusion saves files to the cloud, not necessarily directly on your computer. You do have that option to save on your computer, but Fusion is not meant for that way to save. So I'm going to go into a folder here and just scroll through and find the Fusion file I want to bring into Inventor. I'll just take a little bit and it will show me the file here. Important thing, if you want to keep that link between your Fusion file and the Inventor file, make sure that this first one is set, reference model. If you have it set to convert to Inventor, it will not keep that link. I cannot make a change to Fusion and then expect it to update within Inventor. So I'll leave it as is, click on OK. And then there's that in Fusion 360 file. Okay. I don't actually have Fusion up right now, but I'm not going to go through the time to bring it up. But if I brought up Fusion and I went into a feature, maybe I took this surface and I can stretch that out or move it up, move it down. Then when I came back to this Inventor file, I could right-click right here and I could go to where it says check for updates. Inventor goes over to my Fusion software, sees if a change was made. If it hadn't been changed, it's going to go back into my Fusion file here and update it. Okay. All right. Basically, the last slide here I have for you is just, or last demo is if I go into, just search for Autodesk and turn on my desktop app. I'm sure most or all of you already know about the desktop app. So taskbar, you have the icon right there, Autodesk Desktop app. So this is where you can search to see if there's any updates or anything like that. Some of you may have called our tech support line before, saying that you had some graphical issue or fatal errors in your software or something like that. One of the first things that us tech guys do is a lot of times ask for what service pack are you on? So this is where you can access your various service packs. Here's one right here on Recap. I haven't updated Recap because I don't necessarily use it, but I can come in here and update using this desktop app. Your Autodesk account, when you have this dialog box up, you can go to your name here and just say account details, my products, and click on that, and that will take me online to my Autodesk account, where I can access all my various softwares that I have purchased and install anything that I have not installed on my machine. And as long as I'm logged in, which I thought I was, there you go. Okay, so here's all the different softwares that I own. And I can go there and I can access or install those various softwares. So with that, that is all that I have, Dave. What kind of questions do we have?
I am not seeing anything in the chat box or the questions right this second, and we are coming down to the end of the line here. So what I'm probably going to do is just have you guys, any questions that come up, I'm going to change the presenter over to me here, and just do this quick. Thank you for attending today's event. Just a couple of wrap-up things here. First and foremost, any questions that come in, please just put them to sales@go-applied, and we'll make sure we get them answered. Or you can email them to myself or Jerry directly if you have those contact information. Thanks for attending this session. The next session is going to be starting immediately on Vault 2020 and what's new. You're going to be receiving a survey in the email form here just shortly after you close out of this. There's only 3 questions on there. It should take you 2 minutes. It's simply how was the session for you today, and what are topics that we might be able to present on in the future that would be very beneficial for you. So please, we would appreciate if you can fill that out, especially on the topic side. We really want to gear this towards what you guys want to see. Also, in the next 2 weeks, we'll be sending out the $100 training vouchers for anybody that attended these events, so you can look for those. And if there is any training classes that you want to attend sooner, please let your sales rep know that and let them know that you attended this event, and we'll make sure to get that out to you or get you credited for it. Let me just say it that way. Lastly, our training webinar schedule is in the attachments, so feel free to grab that. You can also see here we have upcoming webinar in June on iLogic. July is on Vault Professional and the lifecycle schemes. And then in August, we've got our best practices for AutoCAD Electrical. And lastly, in September, Inventor collaboration, talking about the different tools for collaborating with Inventor. So really good webinars coming up. They're all free. Please keep an eye on them and log into them as you see fit. With that said, appreciate you guys joining us today. Again, check out all the rest of the webinars that are coming up. And if there are any questions, please reach out to us. Either call us or email us at sales@go-applied.com. Thanks and have a great day.
Thank you.